What is up, my people? It's been a little bit. We are back with another anime discussion. Today we are here talking about a show that kind of blindsided me. I actually had no idea this even existed before my good friend Damo here suggested that we watch it. That is called To Your Eternity. Now, I feel really, really stupid for not having this be on my radar because it is incredible. And with me today to discuss it are, as I said, Damo, who is the one who actually wanted to watch it with me, and
rated it in its entirety. Yes, that's
yes, and Messerschmitt, and we are roommates. We are what is called the Troy Boys. So let's again just give Dom the credit that he deserves, because this show was awesome, and I can't wait to talk about it. Now, attaboy.
I can read.
I hope so. You're an English major.
Oh,
and you taught kids. I sure hope you can freaking read. Anyway,
this country's future is anime. As
kind of
evidenced by Dom.
That I don't like the connotations of that.
He's teaching our kids.
I don't like the connotations of that.
I don't know if I do either.
That's the future of this country being anime is very scary. Although not nearly as scary as probably the actual reality. Anyway, we do want to let you know that we kind of felt like it is impossible to talk about this show without spoiling it. So, if you clicked on this video and you haven't watched the show, do that and then come back and watch this, because we are spoiling everything. And
it's very good. It's so good. Don't do that.
It's really good, and I feel like I'm not someone who normally cares about spoilers that much, but for a show like this, spoilers will massively affect your overall enjoyment of the show. So just go watch it, come back, and then you can listen to this discussion.
If you clicked on this video to see if you want to watch the show, you want to watch the show, go watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Go away.
That is exactly the sentiment that we all have. Anyways, we are going to start from the beginning. What we are going to do, this show has kind of a unique formula, where, yes, it is one continuous story that builds upon itself. However, it is sort of similar to some episodic, like, vignette shows where there is like a little mini arc that is self-contained as well. Like, they do build upon themselves, but the story is its own thing. So we're going to go arc by arc until we finished it, and we're going to give our thoughts on each arc. Then we're probably going to discuss what our favorite arc was, what our favorite characters were, and then give the show a final rating before sending off. So that's going to be the formula of this video. So first off, we're going to get to the first arc, which is a very small one. It was a single episode. It was the introductory episode, and it is the boy's arc. He is never given a name. He is just known as the boy. And I remember when we first watched that episode, I remember even saying that felt like it could be a short movie, like a short story, like its own self-contained individual thing. I felt like it was really effective, and I loved it. But I wanted to I've been talking a little bit, so I wanted to pass the torch off. Let's start with Messerschmitt first, if he had any particular thoughts on that first episode. And we, of course, remember, we can go into spoilers. We can talk about specifics. We're totally fine with doing that today. So I'll pass the torch off to you.
I think that first episode, while very intriguing, like right up front, is perhaps best viewed through a lens of like hindsight.
Okay.
Because it does do a lot to essentially kind of establish the rules of the universe and of our main character, and kind of set really the tone overall for
Mm.
the show. It doesn't feel like when you're watching it and you're going into the next episode, you really like, to me, you sit there and you're saying to yourself, I'm still not sure what I'm expecting out of this.
Mm.
Because the main character hasn't really fully been established as a character. He is there, but he doesn't have a lot of personality traits yet. But you learn about the character of in this world all alone, which kind of really is an incredible kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? I want to say backdrop, but it's more than that. It's an allegory or a parallel
Mm.
for the main character
Okay.
as he comes into the world. Like, he is alone. He is the only one of his kind, sort of thing. He's struggling. He doesn't know which way to go to get where he wants to be. Like, upon rethinking it, that first episode perfectly sets the tone for the show. But at the time of watching it, there's no way to know that.
Right. I definitely remember right with you. I was thinking I'm very intrigued. I don't know what to expect from this show yet. I don't know the direction that the show is going to go, what could possibly happen, which is I think why I said it would be really cool as a short movie, because it felt very self-contained in that way. Domsmash, I'm sure you have some other things to add. There's definitely a lot to break down in that first episode, so I'll let you have the floor next.
Yeah, I think this is actually my second favorite arc,
Interesting.
despite it only being one episode.
Okay.
In recent times, I've become a lot more enamored of tight, focused, short stories with no fat.
Okay.
And I think that it's quite effective in setting everything up in one episode.
Yeah.
As Messerschmitt rightly pointed out, it introduces the themes of the show, it introduces the rules of the show. Not all of them, because it can't,
Right.
but the basics. And it's interesting. The way I saw it was, I heard this was a good show, watched one episode by myself to see if I thought it was good enough to bring to you guys. It's like, I have no idea what the hell this is, but it's really good. So then I came back and watched it again with you guys, and I think that watching it twice really let me take in everything and appreciate this first little introduction to the show. I think it's very effective. Maybe because it's a relationship between a dog and his owner also helps. I'm a big dog person.
We tout the 3-episode rule, but it does kind of feel like you could watch episode 1, and whether or not you're enjoying yourself may not 100% convert to the full show, but I think it'd be a good indicator.
Yeah. Did you guys feel any, like, did you cry in that first episode? Because I kind of got a little teary eyed.
I got a little bit teary. Yeah,
like,
sad.
It was definitely very sad. I mean, like, we will spoil it, right? It was the boy had been abandoned by his village. He had to he was staying home to take care of the elderly, right? As they died off and the rest of the tribe migrated. It was unclear. It's somewhere up in the north, whether it was like Inuit or if it was Ainu, right? Or like Russian. It's like Siberian, whatever.
Is this Earth? I don't think this is Earth.
I don't think it is, but I just mean,
like, at the same time, it is very inspired by Earth.
Right. Yeah. Every arc kind of takes place in a different culture, if you will. And whatever the tribe was that the boy belonged to, did seem very inspired by those types of tribes, of those indigenous people. And eventually the elderly pass away, his pet wolf or dog dies, and that's eventually how the being, as Fushi, as it later becomes known, he is able to transform into once living beings that he comes in contact with that have died. So he's actually able to transform into the wolf. He makes his way back to the boy, and they kind of establish that relationship. And at the beginning of the journey, the boy tries to move on to meet up with the rest of his tribe, and he comes across their graves, indicating that they did not make that, and he got a mortal injury that forced him to go back to his singular village, where he dies in solitude in front of the being, and then the being takes over the boy's form. And I wasn't bawling or anything, but I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a heavy show.
Yeah, that first episode is kind of a train wreck in slow motion as well, because it's pretty clear pretty early on just how doomed his efforts are.
Yeah.
Um, and with each setback that sort of breaks him that little bit each time, it's just it's very effective.
Yeah. There is.
Well,
Go for it.
sorry. Like, there are several sad points even within that episode, but I thought perhaps the saddest was when he absolutely realizes that his family and the caravan is dead, there are no survivors, and that he has a very unfortunate and possibly mortal wound to his leg. He still like essentially refuses to accept it, or like
Yeah.
he tries to keep himself optimistic.
Yeah.
That's probably the point that like broke me the most.
That's what always breaks me, like Vinland Saga, which we watched recently as well, when the sister hears the news and tries to carry on and like doesn't let it hit her for a full day or more.
Yeah.
With forced happiness. Like that is so much more heartbreaking than tears.
Yeah. No, well, I agree to a point. We might get to a discussion later on in this episode where the opposite is kind of true for me, but but it did such a good job of kind of showing expectations of again, you're not sure where the show is going to go yet. There are hints, especially now that we finished the show, that they're basically screaming, "This is what the show is." But at the time, you don't really have any of the context, so you're just kind of guessing. The last thing I wanted to talk about, which kind of makes an appearance, but then is still shown throughout the show, is the boy's drawings of his family on the wall, and how throughout the show you see the boy and the dog, and then the people that Fushi, the being, meets, also filling out the wall, and it kind of paralleling that. I really liked that. I thought it was special, and we'll talk about that more.
It's a good
Starting
motif.
with the next arc. Was there anything else you guys wanted to say about the boy before we moved on to the next arc?
I wish
There's an
we got his
interest.
name, but
Yeah. The interesting thing with the boy is that in the first episode, it makes you feel like the reason Fushi seeks out new experiences, seeks out all that stuff, is because that's what the boy wanted.
Mm.
But it is very much the reason he was created as well. So
yeah.
it's an interesting thing, like how much of that is the boy in Fushi's own desire to do that, and how much of that is inbuilt.
I mean, I think certainly at that point it was the boy's desire, because we do see him become easily swayed by others'
Mm.
emotions like that, and he was not very much fully functioning thinking being at that point.
No.
Which, if I have any kind of criticism of the show, is that it probably took a little bit too long for him to develop into a character.
Yeah.
Potentially, I could agree with that, maybe.
And
But
even by the end, like he doesn't have a lot of his own motivations. He has some, but not very many.
Yeah. I think
I view that as a criticism, though, because it's kind of like Discovery, this show.
Yeah, it is. I agree, but he doesn't have a strong motivation for discovery either.
Mm.
You know, like he gets pushed into it a lot of the time. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I guess it's like he's developing into more of a human, though. Like when he is
I'm interested
as
to see.
primitive as he is early on, it's like stuff like motivations is kind of beyond him.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, he's learning how to human, and
Yeah.
the motivation will come with that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the motivation starts in the next arc, and I guess we can transition. It makes a good segue into
Oh,
my favorite arc, which is March's arc.
yeah,
Very
mine
very
too.
cute arc overall.
Oh yeah, it's adorable, so cute.
Yeah,
It
so
is. What are you
it
talking
it
about?
is. It's also heartbreaking. So the backdrop of it
I don't know what you're talking about.
is Fushi moves on from the pole, and it does establish that he is immortal. Every time he dies, the being, he he resurrects himself shortly after. So he basically Dark Souls it all the way to another tribe, another part of the world,
He Dark
dying.
Souls his way through the whole show.
Yeah, but like specifically this, it's like he walks for like a day, dies, spends
Yep.
like a day rezzing, walks another day, dies because he's too stupid to understand that he needs food and water. Like it
Yep.
is, he never Dark Souls more than he Dark Souls right now.
Yeah.
But he finds his way into another part of the world, and it doesn't immediately follow him. It actually changes gears and follows this little girl who's a part of this little tribe. I don't know if they're supposed to be like Pacific Islanders. I don't know if they're supposed to be like
Probably fairly good guess. I would probably say Southeast Asian.
Southeast Asian, Pacific Island
Fuji.
food. Yeah, something like that. But just the sweetest, most energetic little girl, and I actually thought she was kind of annoying for the first like 5 minutes because she was a little much, but she grows on you, and her personality.
Oh, yeah.
She's so like
Such a munchkin.
such a little munchkin. She like her whole goal in life
Little goblin.
is established really early that she wants to grow up and have a family. Like she just wants to be a mom. And she even has like her little dolls that she plays with and becomes a mom with the little dolls. But the backdrop of the tribe is there is this ancient bear demon that comes and attacks them. And in order to keep the demon at bay, they sacrifice a young girl to appease it. And you find out she's the one who's been chosen literally because she's the cutest. And you're like, wow, that's fucked up. I don't like that at all. But she starts getting transported to the sacrifice zone, and I can't remember if her like the other character Parna, who's essentially acts as like a surrogate older sister. I can't remember if she attacks the caravan and then March escapes, or if March just
No.
like escapes.
March escapes on her own merit,
Okay.
and then Perona kind of comes by and is like, "Where is she? I'm rescuing her," and they're like,
Right.
"Well, we lost her."
She pretends like, so March, the little girl, pretends like she is okay with being sacrificed as she's being transported, and then she decides, no, fuck that, I want to live, and runs down the hill, which is where she finds Fushi, who is about to be named by March, but the being in like a decaying zombified corpse that like resurrects in front of her, and she's like terrified
Awesome
at
scene,
first.
by the way.
Is an
Absolutely
awesome scene.
amazing scene, and I wish they had done a little bit more of that.
Is an awesome scene.
Joe likes zombies, I guess.
It was just really cool. I mean, if the main point of his power is that he can't die, and they do like make a point of that later, he uses it to his advantage. but they don't make it look like that.
No,
You
they
know?
don't.
True.
But he resurrects in front of her and then just starts walking because he doesn't really have a consciousness yet. And March, being a curious little girl and wanting any kind of protection and just wanting to be away from the people who want to murder her, which I guess we should go into a little bit because
They actually
Hayase,
see
right?
they see him resurrect, and they just
Do they run
they're
away?
like, nope. Yeah, yeah, they run away.
Okay.
They're like, not worth it, not worth it. I'm out. Which honestly, smart guys, right there.
Yeah. I guess we should backtrack and talk a little bit about Hayase and her character a teeny bit because she was kind of the catalyst for the girl sacrifice.
Honestly, I think we need to rewatch this, but I'm pretty sure there's a plot point that they kind of gloss over where Hayase's civilization
yes,
is kind of encouraging, let's say, these
yeah.
tribal civilizations to offer up their children to essentially keep control over them
yes,
in
that's
some way.
exactly correct.
It's like they're vassals almost.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
it's essentially like a feudalistic Japanese civilization that is like an empire lording over all these different tribes, and they do this ritual and encourage the ritual essentially to keep them in line. And they do go into that quite a bit. And Hayase is kind of the general or whatever who's in charge of this tribe. The constable, maybe, I don't know. That's not entirely clear, but she's the one transporting March and is kind of making it her life's goal to have March be sacrificed. Anyway, March escapes, finds Fushi, follows him, and kind of gets her wish a little bit. She wants to become a mom, and she kind of, even though she's like a 5-year-old little girl, kind of becomes his mom. Kind of teaches him a little bit about how to think, a little bit about how to talk, a couple words, shows him how to feed himself. Absolutely love the scene where she climbs up the tree and is just like throws fruits down at him and is like eating it, and it's even in the anime intro with her like munching on the fruit and just like big bites and just like juice going all down her. It's adorable. But she kind of teaches him a little bit and kind of gets that wish fulfillment of being a mom. Before, I believe, Parina meets back up with them, or who, or what is it? I think Hayase takes her back to the ritual site. She brings her back to the ritual site.
Yeah, because he has no like real way to know. He follows them or something because she was.
He's more or less a vegetable in human form at this stage still.
Yeah, this is like this is basically the point at which I was hoping he would advance a little bit more quickly.
Yeah, basically all he can do is say arigato and transform in between the boy
Even
and
that
the
takes a
wolf.
while. Yeah,
that does take a while.
But March is put on. She's like knocked out with the sleeping meds, which have come up multiple times throughout the show. She's put on the altar, and the bear demon comes, and Fushi essentially comes in as the wolf and kills the bear, but also dies himself and gets resurrected. And this sends Hayase into kind of a psychopathic rage. Right. She's like, I want this. It's not clear yet.
It's very quiet at this stage.
It is quiet at this stage, but this is like she sees this immortal being and is like, I need this for my country. This is going to bring me glory, right? And it's not entirely clear yet as she pretends like they're all buddy-buddy and that they've gotten their freedom. She brings them back to the town, to her hometown, feeds them, pretends like everything is okay, but then drugs them, throws them in jail, blah blah blah. Right? And then, I mean, there is a lot. I'd say this arc might be this or Gugu's arc are probably the meatiest ones.
Yeah, I think Gugu's is probably the meatiest.
But they get thrown in jail. Uh, they some stuff happens. They end up escaping. Right. It is shown then that Fushi now, because he came in contact with the bear demon, can actually transform into the bear demon. So now he gains another massive, super big form, and they meet up with this old lady who essentially is able to provide transportation out. So they try
I
escaping
mean,
from the town.
I think there's an important plot point there with March essentially like almost absolving the bear of
Mm,
being a demon.
okay.
Right. I thought that
Forgiving it.
that was a fairly powerful scene. Like, um, you know, Perona wanted to take its eye to show the tribes that the bear demon is dead. Um, but March is like he's he's just innocent. Everyone's attaching this uh the significance to his life that he didn't ask for, that he doesn't really like, that isn't who he is,
Mm,
sort of thing. I think that also is an important kind of plot point when it comes to Fushi, because these a lot of people like Hayase want to use him willingly or unwillingly, like as a method of getting what they want. And there are characters like that further down the line too,
yeah.
that wanted to use this bear demon as essentially at the reason for keeping all these tribes in line, right? Um, and Fushi is kind of now on the chessboard as a piece. So I think there's some good parallels there. Um,
Yeah, I completely agree. Did you have
I think
anything
my
to
f-
add, Dom?
I think my favorite thing about this arc is seeing March as a young, innocent Munchkin girl having to face all of these incredibly adult themes, ideas, and decisions.
mhm.
Like when she goes with Hayase, it's willingly because she doesn't want somebody else to have to take her place.
Yeah, that's true.
That's such a cruel thing for a 5-year-old,
Yeah.
or however old she is, maybe younger. Um,
I think she's 5 or 6.
Something like that, yeah. And like just constantly, she's faced with these situations, these decisions that um, she handles with grace for someone of her age, but like you're constantly thinking as you watch this, God, she shouldn't have to be doing this,
Right.
and you just want her to, you know, get old enough to be able to face this stuff fully equipped, but she never gets to.
Yeah. That's very true. I guess I didn't really consider that in the moment. Um, that's all good stuff. One thing I also feel like I glossed over a little bit is through escaping, Parna, the older sister character, shows off how badass she is because she's kind of the one that breaks them out. Um, she is just an incredibly capable character, and I love her. So I just want to throw that out there. But anyway, they meet up with this old woman Pioran, who provides transportation out. And as they are fleeing, Hayase and her lackeys follow after them.
I think
And
they take her because she's the only one that knows the route, right?
yeah, maybe that's
Something
what it
like that.
is.
Because like
I don't
they had
exactly
never
remember why she
they
comes
had never
along.
been to this city, but she had been there before because she was a
Yeah.
prisoner, right? Something
Yes.
like
Yeah. They met her in the prison. Um. And what happens on the escape is the moment that I think broke me the hardest. I remember turning to Dom and Mez after it happened and being like, I was expecting like a shonen battler kind of show, and I got Anohana, and I wasn't
that.
prepared for it. I was so sad.
Yeah.
And we've watched some sad stuff, but I think it was the first time we turned and looked at each other, just like, oh, we're all crying. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't just crying, I was like bawling my eyes out. And Hayase shoots an arrow at Parna, and you're like ready for Parna to die.
You're not happy about it.
Not happy because Parna's awesome. I love Parna. You're like, she's gonna die. And March jumps in front of her, takes the arrow, and dies. The 5-year-old cute little kid. And Parna is
You guys are really selling this.
distraught. Now, there is a scene then where you see March's ghost form, and she's not entirely sure what's going on, but she sees Parna trying to commit suicide because of how sad she is, and March tries to get her to stop but can't because she's a ghost before Fushi finally gets her to stop. And then it was so heartbreaking, but I was enthralled the entire time. And as they then Fushi convinces them to still try to escape. He turns into the bear to kind of cover the escape and kill all the lackeys or whatever. And they finally get back in, make it back to the town where March and Parna are from, and Parna presents March's body to her mom and dad. And
Actually, a little confused because I don't think she did. Right? She just gave him the letter.
She had a bundle. It wasn't big enough for
Did she
all of
still have the?
March.
Yeah. Did she still have the
It
bundle?
might have just been her
I
bones.
thought she had her like wrapped up in the.
So this is where the show does skip around, like maybe a little bit. Like, they show them escaping, and she absolutely has the bundle that is March. But by the time they get to the village, which is like kind of a screen wipe and supposed to be a while later, I don't think the bundle is big enough to be a body.
Okay.
Might just be the bones.
If not, they give her maybe the clothes and then a letter that March had written. I guess we skipped over that. I apologize, but there was a moment where March wrote a letter to her parents, and
It's fine.
and
Assuming
by write
they're
a letter,
watching this, they've watched it, right?
right?
Yeah, like we don't really need to go over everything.
Yeah,
Point by
exactly.
plot point.
Just the
So
things that were.
they gives the letter to them, and everyone cries, and it's really sad.
That one that hit me pretty fucking hard too. Like it's a 1-2 punch really, because she dies and then the letter is ink. I don't know, because it's like a happy letter.
Yeah.
Which is not really appropriate necessarily.
But
when she gets shot by the arrow, again, I was struck by like the arrow is bigger than she is. It's longer than her body. Like, why has it come to this?
Yeah.
Was the feeling that kept on hitting me. It's like, oh god.
Yeah, no, it was rough. But not in a bad way, because like it was a subversion of expectation. She went out as a hero, and you also see a fake flash forward of like what life could have been for her, and you see her like as an adult.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful and stunning, and she's just like this beautiful woman who's just like having the time of her life, right? And it's really sad, but makes you feel really crazy things.
It's earned. Like a lot of the time, anime in particular, I feel is guilty of this sometimes. Just like throw horrific situations at you without any build up, without any emotional investment, with like they're just trying to elicit emotion from you without earning it.
Yeah.
Whereas this show takes its time and builds to something. And yeah, they're killing a kid, and you don't really want to see that. but it's thematic. It is treated respectfully, I would say.
Yeah.
It's
And
not done for cheap emotional reactions. It's earned. I think
she also
it's
goes
very
out as a
effective.
hero.
Yeah.
Like, she
Yeah.
goes out protecting her older sister, and like, it shouldn't be like, life kind of teaches us that the elder sister, brother, parent, whatever, protects the life of the young child. Like, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
But in this case, it was flipped, and that's part of what makes it so heartbreaking. Because like, I didn't want Powerna to die, but I was ready for it. I was not ready for March to die.
And it
Yeah.
really does act as the catalyst for like that moment is perhaps the most important in the series
hmm
as a catalyst for him to become human, to kind of find a family, to even be interested in learning about the world around himself, because that was one of the things that March wanted out of life, was to
Yeah,
know everything. Like, yeah, that is probably the pivotal moment.
yeah. I think it's the first moment where the Fushi starts becoming an actual human. It's not there
Yep.
yet, but now we start transitioning into the second arc, and on the way there, he decides to leave the village with the old lady Pioran because she knows of a place that they can go, and so she takes him. But while that happens, there is one scene I do want to mention that's important for later, where Hayase is on a hill and is trying to aim an arrow down at her at Fushi and Pioran, and Parna fires an arrow, hits her in the hand, and starts bawling because she missed. And it had been established that as much of a badass as Parna is, she wasn't very good with the bigger bow. It seems like a small point, but this moment happens, and we're gonna stow that until later. But we start transitioning to the next arc, which is Gugu's arc. And if I'm actually gonna, because Mez, you said that Gugu's arc is your favorite arc, I'm actually gonna pass the torch over to you if you kind of want to take point in talking about it. I will say is he gets introduced to this young man in a shop, a young boy in a shop who is wearing a mask, and starts to become friends and kind of like a family. And I guess that's where I'll just straight up let you have the reins and talk about what you want to talk about. And we can fill in the gaps.
I mean, I think, yeah, we don't necessarily have to go through everything that happens in Gugu's arc, but I think the main point is that Gugu's arc is where Fushi kind of really learns what a family is, right? Up until this point, like, we had heard, like, he wasn't conscious enough when he was talking to March, or when March was talking, to understand the family dynamics. Even though he did understand himself that March was his mom.
It almost feels
In a,
like he
in,
understood that in retrospect.
yes,
Also,
in a way, because she was the birth of his consciousness.
like by the time he gets
Kind
to
of,
Google, he's like, "Oh, that's what a mom is." Wait, that was March for me.
Right.
yeah. So Gugu's arc is where he kind of develops a sense of family, and I like, this is my favorite arc, probably mainly because that is the theme. I thought that it's like a very ragtag bunch of people that come together. None of them seem to fit together quite correctly, but they make for a good family.
Right.
Yeah,
Um, as
got the
as
booze
weird as that
man,
all, yeah, Gugu
Puron. Yeah, so like
is
an aging female criminal, a
yep,
crazy
mad
brewer slash mad
mad
scientist,
scientist. Yep,
an abandoned boy with a
they're basically
disfiguring
basically
injury.
Frankenstein. He's
Yeah,
basically Frankenstein. I
he's
mean,
basically
Yeah.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
almost like
true.
he's not. He didn't die, but he's almost reanimated.
yeah.
And he's like, his body's been modified, and he wears this mask out of shame, and like when he takes it off, everyone thinks he's a monster. again, a very good parallel because Fushi actually legitimately is, in some senses, a monster.
Yeah.
He's not human, but in personality, in practice, he is. But like his anatomy is not human, whereas Gugu has human anatomy but is treated like a monster. So pretty good theming once again. I like how this show does that. And then despite everyone's hatred of Gugu, he strives to be the best person that he can be. He helps when he can, even if like there is no reciprocation on that aspect. Um, he's generally optimistic. There are certain points where he gets low and everything. There's essentially one topic, which is this girl that he met, that is a soft spot for him. We haven't seen Fushi really have that reaction to anything so far. I wonder if we'll see anything like that in season 2. That would be interesting. I kind of doubt it. See,
I mean, if it's a coming of age story, it might happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could.
I do want to interject and say that this is the arc where the big bad of the show, the Nokers, are introduced. And these are, it's still kind of unclear, even at the end of season 1, exactly what they are. We just know that they are basically antagonistic to the god figure that Fushi had created. They want to essentially destroy the world, whereas Fushi was created to preserve it. It's kind of and preserve like what humanity is.
And it is kind of vague what preserving it means, because
yes,
he becomes pieces of humanity.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting way.
Is he supposed to be a sort of black box for humanity?
That's what
once we're all gone.
That's kind of what it feels like. It absolutely does feel like that. But also, one last thing I want to mention is that the Nokers are able to steal forms away from Fushi. And one other thing is, at this point, you do. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but March died in the previous arc. He is able to transfer himself into her form as well. So every arc he kind of gets a new form, right?
Yeah.
It's the beginning of a certain mantra that I started saying to you guys over and over and over. What was it? Do you remember?
No.
Don't get attached.
Oh yeah. Well, you start basically figuring out what the formula is, right? It's like, oh, this main character of this arc is gonna die, and Fushi takes his form. Awesome.
But don't try not to get too attached.
And then you fail, and then you get
every time. Yeah. Every time.
And then surprisingly, Gugu kind of survives for a while.
He does, and then there's like
they fake you.
There's the climactic fight. They come out on top. Gugu saves Fushi. The real kicker is that Fushi loses all his memories when his form is taken too, of that person, of that form.
Yep.
And he doesn't even realize it.
Time.
Yeah, which is probably the point. Right? They only actually die when Fushi forgets about them.
But after that, there is a time skip,
which does lead to some interesting questions about, like, I wish Fushi had more of interest in himself at some point, because like he can age, right? Or his forms can age as long as he doesn't shift away from them into something else. But I don't see why if he wanted to, he couldn't essentially recall what his form was after he aged and become that form again. It just doesn't seem to be the case. But like, if he had a little bit more interest in himself, in what he was able to do, perhaps he could find a way to tap into that. That's why it does feel like he's not fully formed yet, because he doesn't have a lot of interest in himself.
Right.
I mean, that's not what he is supposed to be. his existence is there to essentially interact with the world and everything, but he doesn't seem to want to follow that directive from whatever you want to call it, God, the man in the black cloak.
Well, that's the funny thing. It's like he seems to have been created to learn as much as possible, hoover up all this information, all these forms, become good at combat, and know all about humanity. But what he wants to do is more like what you want him to do. He wants to become a more complete person.
Yep.
But it is kind of the Nokers are kind of what keeps pushing him forward, because even after the time skip, now he is as fully formed as he has been to this point, right? He can finally read, he can write, he can talk in complete sentences. He is an actual person for all intents and purposes now.
Mm-hmm.
But after the time skip, there is the love story between Gugu and the girl Reen is actually fully developed. That it comes to fruition. They go to her mansion or whatever, and if nothing had happened, I'm fully convinced Rain and Gugu would have probably gotten married and would have continued being a family with Fushi. However, the Nokers attack, destroy the entire mansion, steal the polar bear and March's forms away from Fushi, and the kicker happens. Gugu dies.
Well, we all knew it was coming. We didn't want it to happen.
We didn't.
They keep on faking us out. First, like, oh, Pearl's gonna die. Oh no, it's March. Oh, Gugu lived. Oh no, he's gonna die.
And he basically dies confessing to Reen, fully explaining the history between them. And we didn't go into that because we're super over time already. I didn't want to interrupt anything, but I do want to speed it up a little bit. But he basically confesses everything to her. She reciprocates, and then he dies.
Yeah, that was we haven't even gotten time to talk about the ideal world that comes after death.
Yeah,
essentially, and all of these people that are attached to Fushi essentially turn away from the ideal world to kind of follow him as ghosts, although they can't interact with him. It's not exactly explained if he's the one keeping them there by taking their form, or if they willingly stay, if that's why he can transform into them. Like, these are all questions, very good questions, but like, yeah, you kind of see what his life could have been like in the ideal world, and it's a little bit heartbreaking, but he realizes he already had what he wanted in life, turns back, goes to watch Fushi kind of hopefully try to get away from the Nokers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's pretty powerful too.
And this is also, I guess I can go back, because I do, before I forget about it, this is where you start to realize that the drawing in the first episode of The Family, in between the breaks, like the commercial breaks for the episode, you see the wall painting with at first the boy and the dog, and then as these characters die, they are added to the wall. So for after March's arc, there was a little hand drawing of March on there every time to just remind you of the pain. And now after this Gugu arc, Gugu's on there, and Fushi ends up taking Gugu's form, which is a very good form, because when we brushed over it, but he's ripped and he can breathe fire.
That's kind of sick.
Yeah. But after he saves Reen and kind of follows, he follows the Noker. He gets his form back, right? I forget exactly, because he goes without the bear for a while. No, that Noker escapes. And he gets it back in the next arc.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's basically missing.
It's both March and the bear.
For like an entire arc. But he ends up leaving with Pioran again to try to, I think, pursue the Noker. And she's like, I'm old and gonna die anyways. I'll come along and help you, because you're basically my son at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the final big arc happens, which is a character, another girl named Tanari. Um, I gave. I feel a little bit bad, Dom. I apologize. I gave Joe his favorite arc. I'm giving you your least favorite arc. I wanted to give you the opportunity to take a point as well on something. So if you want to take away Tanari's arc, we are at 50 minutes. I was hoping to get right around an hour. It's okay if we go over, but I'll let you have the floor. We can interject, talk about Tonari's arc, and then finish up with the final one, and then our final thoughts, and be done with the video. So if you want to take it away for now.
Well, again, we don't. I mean, this is a spoilers video. This is a video on the assumption people have seen this already. I don't think we need to rehash the entire plot.
Right.
But this is the island arc, where I think, for me, the big thematic aspect of this arc is dealing with the duplicity of men, the dark side of men, dealing with the darker urges of people. He's learned how to be a person in Gugu's arc, but now he has to face the reality of human society.
That's interesting.
And it takes the form of a penal colony island where there are blood tournaments to determine the nominal leader of the island, until he gets murdered.
Fire in terms of learning the darkness of like, if you went anywhere to learn about the darkness of humans, that would this is
it is a hive of scum and villainy.
Yeah.
And Tanari is a product of her environment being raised here, but at the same time holds on to a core of goodness deep down that gets awakened by Fushi's innocence. Because at the start of the arc, she's acting kind of selfishly. She's using him.
Yep.
But by the end, they're family.
Yeah.
And again, we've got the theme of found family with Tanari's group of kids, as well as another theme that I think is probably going to pervade throughout the whole show.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, for me, I found that this arc dragged a little bit, overstayed its welcome. And while I found Tanari compelling as a character in the journey that she was going on, I didn't find her super appealing.
Right.
For a lot of the time.
I will say the thing that got me the most intrigued with this arc, because I definitely agree with you, it was my least favorite arc. Not that it was a bad one. I think in another show, because like up until this point, I thought it was like a 10 out of 10 show. And this arc did drag a little bit, but what I found the most compelling was the resurgence of Hayase. She comes back, and it turns out that the whole reason why Tanari tricks Fushi and Pioran to get onto the boat to go to the island is essentially because Hayase told her about him. And she is apeshit in this arc. Like, I think there's a full-on episode where she gets naked and licks his eyeball.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, she's just completely fully adjusted and is a normal person. Good to know.
I mean, to be fair, how would you take the emergence of an immortal being?
I think I could resist the temptation to strip
to lick their eyeball.
Yeah, maybe the stripping and like the mounting
and the licking.
Yeah, I could go with the eyeball. I could do the whole package. Why not? But this is also where you find out that, and in a little bit of a flashback, a horrifying flashback, that Hayase came back to the village that March and the Perona were at, and she tortures and kills Perona off screen.
She killed everyone.
Yeah, she probably did kill everyone. I think you're right about that.
The whole village.
And Fushi finds out about this because he transforms into Parana. And I remember when that happened, we're like, oh wait, he can transform into living characters.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
sweet summer children.
Oh,
We didn't know any better.
we never got to see her idealized world either. Like that, I guess it wouldn't have shown too much more light.
Yeah,
But like, I would like to know if she's still following him, sort of thing,
but
her ghost, or if she did go on. Like, what are the measures of his abilities, sort of thing.
yeah, but
Uh,
I mean that was absolutely heartbreaking. And then right when you feel like you can't take any more heartbreak, and Hayase is essentially taking control of the whole situation, the Nokers attack again, and this time they basically take and zombify people on the island, and they zombify all of Tanari's friends. And you think at the start, you think it's Tanari herself is going to die, and I was like, please don't let Tanari die. I don't want her to die. Like
But we
had enough
knew
of
it was likely.
We knew it was likely. She doesn't end up dying. All her friends do, and in a horrific way.
just so in a sense, she is a peer of Fushi. Like Fushi has gone through that experience
Yeah.
with everyone that he has connected with, and now she has as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they are peers. I think they find, as horrifying as it is, they find a lot more respect. Like they already had respect for each other, but after that point, they are find even more respect for each other.
I mean,
And
hats off to the writers. Just when you think you know the formula of the show,
yeah,
They
they
change
throw
it
you
up
through a loop.
just a little bit.
yeah.
But he finally they defeat the Noker, and it ends up being the same one that stole his powers before. So he gets back March and the bear, and there was a little bit more going on. Like when he was talking to Pioron, she actually got really mad at him for forgetting about March, not
Yeah.
really understanding the situation. And when he finally gets back March, it's like, oh my god, she's like she didn't die a second time. Thank God she's back, right? Even though she is still dead.
Mm.
But it was a really big feeling of
Relief.
relief.
Yeah.
And after kind of uniting all the prisoners together, killing the Nokers, Tanari, she decides to stay on the island and become the leader and kind of transform the island into a new vision. And that's when Fushi takes Pioron and Hayase and leaves the island. Then in another scene, essentially just leaves Hayase on a boat tied up, where
In the middle of
she
the fucking ocean.
in the middle of the fucking ocean, where
Like,
another one of the
figured out.
Nokers actually takes form of her, and we're assuming in season 2.
Actually, forgive me if I'm wrong here. I think Pioran leaves with all the children. Right?
Yes, you're right, because Fushi and Hayase. Hayase becomes taken over by the Noker in the middle of the ocean, and he goes into the town. And this is kind of the final little mini arc where it's just about Pioron, right? And oh, sorry.
Just I wanted to get your speculation on, is Hayase going to be able to kind of control the Noker, or is it
Gonna Vecna it.
is it going to assimilate her?
I think it is going to be a symbiotic relationship. I think it will kind of take over her, but I think she is strong-willed enough, and maybe even comes into some kind of contract with it where she still maintains some of her, not sanity, but her willpower.
I think she's gonna go full Vecna.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Like it becomes part of her. She's inextricably linked to it, but I think that she's gonna guide it from now
That would
on.
make for a much more intense and scary version
Yeah.
of that enemy.
A much more human version too, which is in turn scarier.
What do you think Fushi really gained on the island? Because in my opinion, I think he gained the ability to see that fighting doesn't have to be evil. Like, you can fight for something that is good as well.
Yeah, I can
Um,
see that.
because he had been avoiding fighting for even when like Gugu was fighting for him. Like
Mm.
he didn't really spend any of his time thinking about how to fight these things or if he should fight these. Like, he was just avoiding it as much as he possibly could. But on the island, he kind of found the ability as well as like the truth that you can fight and have it still be for a good reason.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with everything.
Yeah.
And that some people suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here we are, transitioning into the final mini arc. It's just another episode, and it's maybe a little bit unfair to say that this one episode is Puron's arc, because she has been around basically since the beginning in every other arc and doing things and kind of contributing to Fushi as a person and kind of being a mother or grandmother figure to her. But this arc is all about Puron withering away and dying of old age, and this is about Fushi finally understanding that this is another part of humanity, which is
That it's inevitable.
it's inevitable. And I don't know how much exactly I want to share about this, but I do have a little bit of a personal connection with witnessing an elderly family member pass away in front of your eyes. Hit me really, 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 really hard. Brought up a lot of memories, and I don't necessarily mean in a bad way. It helped me really connect with what I was seeing on the screen, and it culminates in Pioran dying and essentially making a deal with the god character because she wanted to be a useful tool for Fushi going forward. She wanted her form to be used, but not as this old lady who couldn't do anything. And she essentially strikes a deal with God that allows Fushi to take over her body as a younger character, a younger version of herself. And it was a beautiful scene of self-sacrifice, and I loved seeing her as her younger self walk across the beach. I thought it was very poetic and really just a gorgeous setup.
I think she's going to be reincarnated. I don't know into what, but into something
Could be.
for him because
Yeah, I think
I need to watch that scene again.
as the scene was unfolding, I think I got that implication too. Like, I didn't
Okay.
even know if she was going to be a form. It sounded like she wanted to be reincarnated so that down the line Fushi would encounter her and she would be useful to him.
That'd
I
be
think
interesting.
Fushi does become a form into her as well, but like
Yeah.
I think she's gaming the system a bit. She wants to reincarnate and doesn't care if it like elevates her or if she goes to heaven. She wants to reincarnate into something that like Fushi will be able to use. It's what it sounded like because he's been struggling to find the next thing for him.
Right. No, I can see that too. Well, maybe I misunderstood it a little bit, and I guess we'll find out in season 2. But like I said, it was a mini arc that I found really beautiful and hit me pretty hard.
Yeah,
And
that one was probably the toughest after March
yeah,
to watch.
I think there's a lot of parallels with March as well with Pioran. Like, March was a little girl who saw herself as an adult, as a mom, and Pioran was an old lady who saw herself as a younger person
yeah,
Mhm.
I could see that
and
too.
like wanted to be a younger person again.
Mhm.
Okay.
She said that multiple times, and
Yeah.
it's very human, isn't it?
Yep.
To want what's out of reach,
Yep.
what's coming, to want what was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, last thing before we do predictions of what think season 2 will do, if we even are even able to do that, is I wanted to quickly talk about the actual intro itself.
Super good.
The intro is amazing. The song choice was amazing, but I personally really enjoyed all the visuals of Every single character had its due and showed it as it was, but then showed the idealized version. And again, the one moment that always come up is March as an adult, just like dancing to the music with all her little stuffed animals moving around, and she's just like having a good time. And it got me every time.
It basically fakes you out
Yeah.
until that first big twist, and then it's basically just mocking you the rest of the show. But it's such a good song. I think we listen to it every single time.
Oh yeah, I don't think we skipped it once.
It's like fuck you for doing this to me, but I'm still gonna watch it.
Fuck you, I'll have another.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was great. Anyway, predictions on season 2. Mezz.
Man, he's all alone again. I do really want him to come up with a few more of goals for himself, and I want him to explore his abilities a little bit more.
Okay.
Whether or not I mean I think he will, but obviously I believe the catalyst for most of that has to involve another character, their life and potentially their death. So we'll see exactly.
We're not done having main characters die in front of us.
We'll see what moves him forward, but honestly, I want him to have a little bit more autonomy in the coming arcs.
Okay.
So that's really all I have for. I am enjoying the formula. I'm enjoying the characters that they come up with. They're a little bit silly, but they're very human. And I'm just happy to see more of it.
Okay. Dom.
I expect and hope to see that theme of people not being truly dead until you stop thinking about them evolve in some way. Whether that is through the revelation that he's some kind of black box for humanity, or some way of communicating with the ghosts of the old forms or something. I don't know. I feel like that is going to move forward in some way. I just don't know what form it's going to take, and I'm curious to see what that is.
Okay. I kind of hope it will be heartbreaking when this happens, but we talked about it earlier. I do kind of hope that falling in love is kind of a part of humanity. It would be interesting to see him actually do that in some form, and kind of experience that part of life. I think that would be a really important part of him growing up.
Will it be an older Tanari?
It might be. Honestly, it might be. I wouldn't be surprised. And
an interesting prediction.
I want to see and get more of what the Nokers are, and maybe with Hayase being intertwined with him, maybe she'll actually be able to give a voice and
actually communicate.
Yeah, and maybe actually talk about what their goal is. That'd be interesting. Those would be my things.
That would be neat.
Anyways, guys, we've come to the end. I am so sorry. I was hoping this would be 20 to 30 minutes, and we are at an hour and 8 minutes.
Well, we had a lot to talk about.
We did. We had a lot to talk about, and I appreciate you for staying and watching the entire thing. All 4 of you who actually did that. We will be back for sure. We want to do, we want to continue Golden Kamui Season 3. Season 4 is currently airing. We haven't watched any of it yet. We're waiting for it all to complete. We will do a Season 3 recap. It has been a while since we watched it, so it might not be as in-depth, but we don't want to just leave you hanging on that. It's possible that we do other anime as well. There might be other things in the works as well. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you'll probably see a lot more of these 2 idiots and more content. And I'm getting back on the train pretty hard. You'll be seeing a lot more and hearing a lot more from us. So if you like this, please like, subscribe, leave a comment on maybe a particular show you want us to watch, or a game you want us to play, or a movie, or just if you want to hear a specific thing from us, or if you have any questions, we'll be willing to look at it. And we will be back shortly. Once again, Super Sheepin, Messerschmitt, Domsmash, signing off. Take care, everybody.